Factual arguments, establishing whether or not something is true or problematic. The first thing you're probably asking is, how can facts even be arguments? Well, if you've lived through the Trump presidency, then you can likely think of dozens of examples of facts that have been called into question. And while this kind of blatant disregard for the truth is typically something we are more likely to see in dystopian novels than in our own lives, the fact of the matter, pun intended, is that facts are subjective. Who you are, where you live, how you've been raised, where you've been educated, all of these factors influence not only what you know, but also how you evaluate the truth. Most arguments require some establishment of the facts. Your audience needs to be on the same page as you regarding what is true if they are going to agree with any of your other claims. When creating a factual argument, always first consider your audience and purpose. Remember that a writer's goal is always to create some kind of change in the audience. There's no point in trying to convince a group of educated non-smokers that smoking is harmful to their health. They already know this. They already act in accordance with this belief. However, it would be meaningful to try to convince a friend who's using e-cigarettes that they need to stop because of the potential harm that vaping could do to them. Facts become arguable when they are questioned, when they raise controversy, and when they challenge people's beliefs. We need factual arguments that correct or challenge widely held beliefs and assumptions that have been formed on the basis of inaccurate or incomplete information. Factual arguments can also be meaningful when they call into question the history or myths that societies want to believe about themselves. You're entering an argument of fact when you make a claim about a fact that is controversial or surprising. For example, in the long run, dieting may be more harmful than moderate overeating. This goes against what most people believe. Most people believe that overeating is going to cause more harm to their health than dieting, that dieting is, in fact, the way to get healthier. So an argument that shows how this belief is flawed is making a factual argument. You're entering an argument of fact when you correct an error of fact. Even though many believe that women no longer need to fight for equal rights, women still make only about 80% of what men do for the same job. So here again, we're looking at a fact that, or information that many people believe to be a fact. They might even provide evidence, and examples. In certain fields, certainly it is true that men and women make the same amount of money. When we do a little bit more digging, we see that this cannot be taken as a universal fact. You're also entering an argument of fact when you challenge societal myths. America was founded on the ideals of equality and justice for all humans. However, we know this actually is not the case. The Declaration of Independence might say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. But we know that when they said this, they weren't talking about women or people of color. As you learned in the types of arguments video, arguments of fact are typically incorporated into other types of arguments as supporting claims. Factual claims usually need to be made early in an argument because the audience must agree with the facts before they will accept more complex reasoning. When creating a factual argument, meet your audience where they are. Consider what knowledge they already have, and then show them how what they believed to be facts are inaccurate or incomplete. So we're going to look at a few examples of student arguments that incorporate factual claims. The first one is a paper about Muslim women's education. And here is the thesis. The key to end the injustices that these women are victims of is to grant them their deserved education in order to liberate them and help prove their worth, not only to their countries, but also to themselves. So this is overall a proposal argument because the bulk of the argument is devoted to the specifics in terms of how women should be educated and why that is a good solution. So if the paper is largely focused on solutions and how those would work, it's really a proposal argument. But she makes a factual argument in the first body paragraph because in order to get the audience to stick around long enough to listen to what she's proposing, they first have to believe there's a problem. So the writer must first prove that Muslim women are the victims of unspeakable violence. Her audience might be generally aware of this, but they do not know the details or the extent of the abuse, and convincing them of this is more likely to motivate them to actually do something. So we're going to see, this is a fairly long paragraph. I have it included over 2 slides, and I'm not going to read it out loud, but I would like you to take a moment to pause this video and read it to yourself. And when you're ready to continue to the next slide, which includes the second half of the paragraph, then just resume play. This is the second slide or second half of that paragraph. Please pause the video again here to give yourself time to read it. What you should notice in this paragraph is that the writer has included quite a bit of factual evidence, statistics, and data. She also writes in a way that helps us know that she is challenging our beliefs. The third line on this slide, I'm sure you are thinking that this horrifying story can't possibly get any worse. It does. The people behind this crime are the father and brother of these girls. So she's really thinking about her audience and what they already believe about the way that these women have been treated or are being treated, and not just shoving facts at them, but acknowledging that this is something that they don't believe in, kind of reinforcing for them that, hey, I'm showing you something that you didn't know or that you believed to not be true. Our second example comes from a paper about teens and e-cigarette use. And this is ultimately overall a cause and effect argument about why e-cigarette use has skyrocketed among teenagers. And the first part of this paper is showing how this is in fact a problem. Because if we don't agree that it's a problem, then we're not going to care enough to think about what's causing the problem. So here's the thesis. Along with social media platforms doing little to prevent the exposure and normalization of electronic cigarettes among adolescents, drug companies attract susceptible young people to their products. Consequently, electronic cigarette use among teenagers has increased to an epidemic level in recent years. So similar to the previous example, this writer makes her factual argument in the first body paragraph. She must first prove that a high number of teenagers are using electronic cigarettes before she can make her causal argument, because otherwise the audience won't believe what she's saying. They won't care. So again, I encourage you to pause the video. This is a shorter paragraph. It's only 1 slide. Pause it to read the example, and then when you're ready, resume play. You can see that there's similar methods for developing the argument here. We have quite a bit of data and statistics, quote unquote facts, to help prove the fact, but that's helpful for the audience because they probably don't know this information. And as we conclude, just please keep in mind that factual arguments are really helpful for your audience. Regardless of the umbrella type of argument that you make, you will likely need at least one factual sub-argument that moves the audience from what they currently know to what they need to know in order to understand and ultimately accept your argument. All decisions that you make in your argument need to be about meeting the needs of your audience and moving that audience from point A to point B.